courageous enough to love me, because that's what love is about. You know, it's about being courageous. And if you came in with all these hang-ups, if you came in with all of this fear, why are you here? You know what I want. You know, I've been honest. And so I just learned a whole lot of things about my perception of men was off. It was totally off. And when you don't grow up with fathers and brothers and uncles and men who you can really use as a barometer, because, you know, a lot of times people will say it's important for little boys to have their fathers around. It's important for little girls to have their fathers around as well. It's just as important for little girls. It's, you know, you need that, because when you don't have that in your life, you don't have a barometer by which to measure what the standard of manhood is. Not just being around males. You know, what is the standard of manhood?
I was going to say, because I had a lot of men in my life, and I think it goes back to humanity. Yes. I mean, what kind of people is it that you have in your life? Because you can have the kind of males in your life that are molesters.
Yes.
You can have the kind of men in your life that are philanderers, you know, just not great examples for male or female.
Yes.
So, you know, I think it has to do with the type of person.
Yes.
The type of male.
Yes. I mean, no doubt, you know, some people will say, oh, you know, because you grew up in a single parent household, that household is dysfunctional. No, you can grow up in a two-parent dysfunctional household.
That's right.
You know what I mean? I don't think it really has to do with, sure, the fact that one parent is missing, that right there is a challenge. And we can't negate that. But you have instances where both parents are there and the children grow up, you know, with the same amount of challenges that someone who grew up in a single parent household. So it's not just a matter of being present. It's a matter of, how do your parents engage with you? How do they build a relationship with you? How do they nurture you? What type of influence do they have over you? I think I was very idealistic about men, you know, because I have this ideal in my mind that, oh, you know, knight in shining armor, and you know, all men are here to save the day, and you know, and that's not true. You know, men basically, I mean, we live in a society, and I have problems with the society that we live in. You know, you know, America is a beautiful place. And, you know, but we take our bitters with our sweets. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you got to take off those rose-colored glasses and see everything, you know, the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful. And I think a lot of times we don't see the side that says, you know what, you're just a sex object. You know, all I want from this is sex, because somebody projects that they really care about you, when in their heart, you know, they just out to get what they can get. And so they'll tell you whatever they want to tell you to get that, and you thinking it's genuine, because in your heart your feelings are genuine, and you're not just saying it just to say it or because you have an agenda. You're saying it because you mean it. So then you kind of interpret that what everyone says is what they mean, and it's not like that. And because we don't talk about these things, you know, and our parents, for whatever reasons, because of their own personal experiences and their mothers or fathers not sharing, you know, how to really assess, you know, relationships, we find ourselves in these situations where we're misinterpreting why people are doing what they're doing.
Bringing that back to you two,
Mm-hmm.
all that you have just said, is it your relationship with Abdul, has that made you see anything different? Has it made you learn something more? Or are there discoveries that you've never experienced before, based upon his love for you, or just being in this type of relationship that you've never been in before?
Wow, that's a loaded question.
I want to hear from you too, Abdul.
Whew, that's a loaded question. That's a great question, actually. By the time Abdul came along, I was clear about what I wanted in a relationship because of all of the experiences that I had before he came along. I knew how I wanted to be treated. I knew how I wanted to treat a person who I invited into my sacred space. Because remember now, we look young, but we're not young, chronologically speaking. And I think that age is overrated. So the previous relationship was where I really learned that men can be, and I don't really want to say a gender thing because we go through this all the time, you and I. People, I think, because of the type of society we live in, tend to lean more towards being more deceptive on the surface than authentic. So that's, and then there's the spiritual aspect of being comfortable with who you are. And, in all of my experiences on this planet, I don't really find that a lot of people can be comfortable with just being who they are. It takes time, takes years to warm up, it seems like. But by the time Abdul came along, I knew what I wanted. I knew what I was capable of doing. I knew the depth of my heart. I knew I wasn't willing to compromise. And so it was kind of just like I detected in him that same level of fearlessness in love. This was somebody who wasn't afraid to say, you know what, I'll be vulnerable. And I think that a lot of times love is you're vulnerable. And that's what I find most men have an issue with, being vulnerable. And I think there's, the reasons for that are very complex. The reasons for that are complex. But the vulnerability, you grow so much when you can be vulnerable. I've never been afraid. He's the first man actually, he's the second man to ever see me cry. Because I haven't been willing to be vulnerable on the surface. I've been very vulnerable, but not just forthright with it. So he's seen me in my most vulnerable emotional states. And I felt comfortable doing that. And I learned how to do that in that 5-year relationship. Now, the funny thing, in that 5-year relationship, I had an instance, and I'll share this with you because I want to bring this point home. The person, I was going through something, and I kind of shared with him that I wanted to, kind of fall back, and I just needed some time to myself. And he didn't internalize that too well. And he stormed out and he threw my key at me and he stormed out and he left. And I broke down. To my shock, actually, I broke down and I was distraught. And I started crying and I was hysterical and I was like, oh my God, I can't. And then there was like the angel and the devil. The angel on the right side said, be vulnerable, girl. Get on that phone. Call him. Let him know how you're feeling. And the devil said, you don't need that nigga. Go on. You don't need him. Do you. But I listened to the angel. And I got on that phone. I mean, I must have called him like maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 times. I left message after message after message and he wouldn't call back. But it was the first time I felt good that I was able to be vulnerable and I was aware that I was being vulnerable. And that I allowed myself to be that and not hold back because I didn't want to appear weak. You know, I didn't want to be looked at as being weak, because that was always a big issue for me in relationships, not appearing to be weak. And finally, even though he didn't call me back, I went to his house. And he opens up the door all nonchalant. Yes, how can I help you? I said, you bum! How come you didn't answer my phone calls? You know? He's like, well, I just wanted to make sure that, you know, you were sure that this is what you wanted. So we laughed about it, and, you know, and we got past it. But that was a big growing phase for me. And, you know, it's just been a growing process ever since. So by the time Abdul came along, I was cool with, you know, loving and being vulnerable and, you know, not compromising, and knowing that, you know, love is not perfect. Our relationship is not perfect. You know, we have our ups and our downs, and we battle. But one thing I'll say about Abdul that's different from any other relationship that I've been in, when I spaz out, he just looks at me real calm. Depending on what it is, he may engage me by saying something like, baby, I know that, you know, I understand why you feel that way. But, you know, maybe you misunderstood. He never attacks me. And because he never attacks me, I'm compelled to give him that in return. So when I'm about to spaz out, I catch myself now, and I go, you know, he doesn't deserve that. You know, let me deal with this. Let me think about this. Let me sit on this. I'm not so gun-ho to just address something maybe in a state of anger. I'll wait, you know, until I can better communicate it to him. Because that's just me following his example. You know, that's just me following his example. So I would have to say that is something I get from him. You know, he helps me to realize I can communicate without losing my mind. He's just calm about everything. It drives me crazy, you know. And I'm like, nobody could be this goddamn calm. Come on.
She calls me happy-go-lucky.
Oh, he just drives me crazy with that. So, but I'm glad he's like that, because it brings out a better side of me. You know, obviously it's a part of me. It's already there. But, you know, he challenges me to be better, you know, to be the woman that I know I came here to be. And I can't say that I've ever experienced that. You know, he brings out the best woman in me. And so I'm grateful for that. That's a blessing. Like, I couldn't have asked for anything more. Really. He brings out the best woman in me. You know, so we work through other things. I mean, your relationship is holistic. You know, you have your health issues, you have your financial issues, you have your emotional issues. And we work through all of that simultaneously. You know, money can make everybody